everyone, welcome back. I'm Michael Sandler, your host on Inspire Nation. If you've ever wanted more peace in your life, then we have the Life Force show for you. Today I'll be talking with Nicholas Vesey, minister of the Aspen Church, an ordained minister in the Church of England, former ranch hand, advertising exec, political consultant, broadcaster, and the author of several beautiful books, including a primer on spirituality and peace, Living with Life Force. And that's just what I want to talk with him about today, about living with life force, giving up control, and finding the inner peace you've always desired. That, plus we'll talk about barking meditations, prime ministers and aliens, George Clooney and Solaris, picking wild strawberries from grandmas, yachts, girls, and private islands, what in the world is a hunt ball, strange days by the doors, Omaguma and a saucer full of secrets, Sarah Connor and the Terminator, the importance of Celestian Ditton 15 speakers, and why in the world what happens in Aspen shouldn't stay in Aspen. So welcome to the show, Nicholas. Are you ready to shine?
I am ready to shine, Michael, and great to be here.
Woo-hoo! Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for joining me here today, Nicholas. Before we dive right into things, where'd you grow up and what's your connection between your mom and James Bond?
I grew up, first of all, in the south of England, in a place called Campbell in Surrey.
Yep.
And then I was sent away to school at the age of 8, but mainly it's in the south. But I'm afraid to say I can't think of the connection between, oh yes, I can think of the connection. A lot of my family worked for MI6. My uncle was an MI6 operative that was involved in various affairs during the 1950s. And my mother also worked for MI6, but I don't think I'm supposed to tell anybody that.
So what is it? If you tell us, then you have to kill us?
I have to kill myself as well. And my mother will probably have to kill me as well.
Oh, yes. No, we don't want that happening. So, all right, I don't know. Strike it from the records. We go back to your earliest years. Tell us then about, car tires, nails, burning things. What was going on back then, Nicholas?
Well, I mean, my father died when I was 2, and it was a really difficult time. There was myself and my mother and my brother who was 6 weeks. Yeah. And I remember my mother telling me that when that happened, the milk froze in her breasts. She was nursing my brother, and really just the love drained out of our family. I mean, my mother was really always, tried the best she could to keep us together. We had birthdays, Christmases, but there was just a sort of emptiness and a lack of that experience of love that was there. And as a result, from a very early age, I just became dysfunctional. I mean, what I wanted more than anything else was attention in my life. I wanted to get my mother's attention. If that love wasn't there, then what I wanted was the attention. So I did what I could. I remember once there was a story. I was like 5 and my brother was 3, and my mother went off to a dinner party in the next door house, and she was having dinner. And in the middle of dinner, one of the people turned to her and said, "Is that your house over the road?" And she said, "Yes." "Would that be your 2 children out on the flat roof above your above your door?" And she looked out there, and we were just out there on the roof because the babysitter had fallen asleep. So I wanted attention. So I did everything from, I remember lining up nails on my mother's tires just so she'd roll over them. She spotted them, thank goodness. I tried to set fire to the garage door. I mean, I was a nightmare, basically. So it's no surprise at the age of 8, in typical British fashion, I was sent away to school.
So, I'm going to say guilty as charged too. I would do such things as kick in the neighbors' basement windows until they would board them up and throw rocks at cars. Oh my God. Okay, going from there, age 8, what does it have to do with, another admission. I'm in a Catholic prep school as a good Jewish boy. I am fighting the entire physics class when the substitute teacher leaves the room. What can you tell us about your school environment and Lord of the Flies?
Well, I went away, to school at the age of 8, and I was dysfunctional as it was. I wanted attention, and immediately I became fat at that point. And I said it became target number 1. Yeah. And really, I was, like Piggy from Lord of the Flies. And I was so disruptive that the teacher made me put my desk right at the front of the class next to the blackboard so that I didn't disrupt other members of the class.
Yeah.
And really, those sort of schools were a complete nightmare. I mean, the violence that was there, the fighting that was there, it was a terrible sort of experience of totally being at sea, really. And I didn't know what to do, where to put myself. The whole thing was a nightmare of experience. And, really, I think it affected me to this day, really, because, I mean, I went through that for about sort of 3 years. And then I got to a point where I thought, just enough. I decided that I was not going to experience this sort of emotional trauma day by day. And so I made a decision that I was not going to cry anymore. And I literally stopped experiencing that emotion of grief. And instead, I began to read a room. I could see when it was coming in my direction. I could push it off into another direction if that happened. And I sort of got a control over my life, but at a huge cost. Because if you're not experiencing emotion, it's like not putting an oil in an engine. The engine starts to heat up. It starts to get to a point where, it's just not going to work. And throughout my life, I've had that issue. I've had that thing where I just need somehow to get rid of the pain. So that has been a sort of, a downside of getting my life in control.
Did you become a runner?
I did not become a runner. No, I became a runner later in life when I wanted to avoid having to play rugby. You had to play rugby at school when I was young, and it is a real contact sport. And I thought, well, enough of that. So I did start running at the age of about 16. And I'm still running, actually. I still run 2 or 3 times a week just to keep myself fit. But no, instead of that, I just bottle myself up. And I'm still not a crier. I don't cry. I mean, I can shed the odd tear at Toy Story 4. Mm-hmm. But apart from that, I'm not, my wife cries for England, as we say in England. But, she cries on my behalf because I just don't.
Very, very good. It's a good balance you've got there. And we'll dive more into that story as we go along. So you didn't cry, you get through school, and you think to yourself, I'm going to go into advertising?
I did, yeah. I mean, when I was at university, when I was at college, I thought, what am I going to do? And I thought I'd go into broadcasting because it was something that, I could get out there.
Yeah.
And in those days, you could just turn up and join the BBC.
You did.
As a student. And I did. I literally walked in and I said to the person, I said, how do I get to join here? She said, well, who are you? I said, I'm a student. She said, well, third door on the right. And there was a student program. And within 3 months, I was doing the morning show.
I love it.
And I was sort of, very early morning show. It was, doing all, I used to marry off my friends. I used to, I had these friends at college. And I used to do, when you play records, you say, well, this is for Mary and John on their 14th anniversary. I used to marry them all off, my friends, and give them children and pretend that they're, here's to, Jane and Joe, and congratulations on your 4th child, and things like that. So I went into broadcasting, but the truth of the matter is I wasn't very good at it. Mm-hmm. I didn't like the idea of just looking at a microphone and speaking. And I thought what the next best thing was really to go into advertising, because again, that had that idea that you were getting out there, you were doing stuff. And I went into the business side of advertising. I became an account manager. And I used to go into the office. I had to go in at 9 o'clock wearing
a fit.
So I used to go in at 9 o'clock wearing a suit. And I used to see these guys coming into the office at 10 o'clock wearing jeans and going out to the pub at lunchtime and then leaving at 4. And I said, who are these people? And they said, well, they're the creative department. So I sort of instantly knew that I needed to be in the creative department. And so eventually I managed to get my way into the creative department and became a copywriter, which was much more my sort of thing, really.
Very cool. So let's go from there and talk about some strong influences in your life. The album Strange Days by the Doors.
Yes. I mean, I was at sea at the age, as I said, of 10, 11, 12, something like that. And the first time I heard something that really made a difference to me was Strange Days by the Doors. And listening to People Are Strange, and when I was a senior, and when the music's over, Yeah, an amazing album. And I just heard something in Jim Morrison that just connected with me at a really early age. And it was the first time I sort of came out of myself in a way and thought, there is a world out there with people who are as strange as I am. And that was a huge connection, really, musically.
So, and when we're talking about coming out of yourself, we often have people on the show who said, I went to find myself in India. You didn't do that, but it kind of, I'll say, shattered the doors anyway.
It did shatter the doors. I mean, I was just in advertising, as I said, but I was fundamentally dysfunctional. I mean, I used to, because I had that pain within me, I smoked a bit of weed, and in those days that was all illegal, and my relationships were all shot to hell because I wasn't really interested in relating. It was really a way, of using sex as pain management, stuff like that. So I was really on a dysfunctional sort of path. I used to pass people in the street, street people, and I used to just know that at some point I was going to end up like that if I didn't change the way that my life went. And I was concerned about the fact that I was not going to, that it was not a sustainable lifestyle. And, one day I went off to a party, and I typically invited a girl out to dinner afterwards. Yeah. And we were just having dinner in an Indian restaurant. And she looked up at this sort of flock wallpaper and she said, I'm going to India for my holiday this year. Would you like to come? I imagine, the Taj, I imagine, nice, huge, big hotels, servants everywhere. And I thought, yeah, that'd be great. So anyway, I sort of got involved. And it wasn't until later on that I realized that this was a trek. And not just any old trek. It was one of those, what they call circular treks. It's where you leave your hotel and you don't come back for 21 days. And we went out and we walked for 21 days up 14,000 feet. Every day we had to go out. We had a little trowel. When we went to the loo, we had a trowel that we had to take with us. It was really basic, and I hated every minute of it. It was awful because it was so stressful. And then actually, when we actually got up into, this is in the Himalayas, in Nepal. So I was right in that area of hippiness that was there, though I wasn't, I was totally oblivious. And so we went up into the mountains, and it got to the point where first of all, you're above the snow line, then you're above the human line. And then one night we were above the cloud line, and we were in this place. I was on one of those peaks, and I was looking down, and the cloud line was below me. It was like 1,000 feet below, and there were these huge peaks coming out of the cloud, and a full moon, and they looked like icebergs floating on this sea of cloud. And I looked out at the sea, and I just went, wow! I mean, hugely wow. I didn't think much of it, but when I got home, my mother said she knew something was up when she saw me wearing Indian clothes off the plane and then claiming to be vegetarian. She just knew that something had shifted, and it had. And I didn't know what the game was, but suddenly, I don't know if you read The Wind in the Willows, where Toad is sitting on the side of the road going poop, poop, because he wants his car and wants a car. I was like that with spirituality. I just wanted it bad.
And I love that you use the word game. And say game on, because the game was on. In fact, the gig was up because it was no accident that you were in that restaurant and with that girl.
No, it wasn't. It wasn't. And I came back completely changed. And I thought, well, this is it. And so I knew that I need to find out what it was about. And I had a friend of mine who I knew was into all this, because when he was into spirituality, and he'd gone and visited his guru in India.
Yeah.
And he didn't have enough money, but he did have a fantastic stereo system with Ditton 15 speakers that I went down and bought for virtually nothing, so he could get his airfare to go and see his guru. So I went down and saw him and said, look, Duncan, his name was Duncan. Duncan Johnson, if you're there, hi. Duncan was there, and I said, Duncan, what's it all about? And he said, well, you are in everything, and everything is in you. I said, well, thanks a lot. That's really helpful. It meant absolutely nothing to me. So he said, I'll tell you what, why don't you read this book? And he gave me a copy of Paramahansa Yogananda's Autobiography of a Yogi. And I read this book. And, it was amazing. The thing that hit me about this book was that this guy totally believed that there was a reality of which I was not familiar. He spoke about it as if it was absolutely true. He wrote about it in a matter-of-fact way. He talked about, visions and dreams and gurus appearing to him as if it was going down the road. And I thought, well, this guy completely believes this. And so I sort of got them. I was sort of still, I was still smoking dope, and I was still living a very dysfunctional lifestyle, and I continued to do that for a while. And I was still doing all this sort of stuff, and I decided, as a typical consumer, that what I needed to do was get enlightened. I mean, that was the game. Okay, spirituality. It's like when you want to get a decent car, you look out there and there's your Porsche and, all the various bits and bobs. Well, in the sort of spirituality business, it's about getting enlightened. That's what it's all about. And I was very frustrated because, you go along and no one will tell you what it's all about, but more about that later on. But I went and joined everything. I joined the Self-Realization Fellowship. I sent them extra money so they'd send me the meditation classes quicker. I did sort of an S type equivalent. Mm-hmm. I did all these courses in a desperate way to actually, try to get enlightened. And and I was sort of on that trajectory. And, I'm embarrassed to say this. I'm embarrassed to say this, but 6 months after I was really searching for this, I had the experience I was looking for. I just had that boom, click experience where you just knew suddenly what they were all talking about. And it just totally, opened my mind in a completely new way. And my life just went suddenly in a totally different direction. And, I went into the advertising agency I was working for, and I resigned. It was an advertising agency called Saatchi & Saatchi, big advertising agency in London. And I joined them only a few months before, and I went in, I just resigned. And the managing director asked me why I was resigning, and I told him, I said that, my duty was to communicate this experience that I'd had. And he said, "You're mad." And it probably was, but my life went in a different direction.
Well, it's interesting. Your life went in a different direction and then found its way right back, because everything moves in circles, spiraling upwards to me. You found yourself back in marketing and advertising.
That's, Michael, it's just so weird. I had this experience, and it was an experience of total connectivity of all things. I just sort of saw, the idea of seeing the light, those tiny little, filaments of light sort of idea. Everything was just connected, and I just knew that was the game. So I thought, well, what do I do with this now? And it's so difficult to know how to deal with it. The best analogy I've got, it's like in England, we have number 10 Downing Street and the Prime Minister. And it's a bit like this, you're invited to a party at 10 Downing Street, a drinks party, and you go along to it, and then you're having your drinks party, and suddenly you need to go to the loo. So you open the door to go to the loo, and you walk towards, you open the door, and there, sitting on the loo, is the Prime Minister. Now, he's sitting on the loo, but his head is on the ground, and instead of his real head, you can see he's a Martian. And you look at him, and he knows that you know that he knows that you know that he's a Martian. And you look at him and you shut the door and you walk away and you think, well, what do I do now? Mm-hmm. Do I go and tell everybody that the Prime Minister's a Martian? In which case they'll say you're bonkers, you're mad. Or do you just keep stum and don't tell anybody that you've seen it? And when you've had that glimpse of that nature of reality, you've got that choice. Do you go out there and say, hey, everybody, everything's connected. There's a whole interconnectedness of all things, and there's a great consciousness that we're all part of. And they think, well, yeah, I know where I'm locking you up. Or do you just keep stum and just carry on with your advertising job, get married, have 2 kids, get your pension sorted out and die? So I decided to go that other route. And, for me, where I wasn't going to go into the church. The church I always thought of in those days, I always thought of as the bag lady of spirituality. The idea you have those old ladies that push along those supermarket trolleys with that all the useless stuff on it. And the church was like that. It was a sort of like total bag lady experience. So I decided the only thing to do was to go into this sort of Earhart seminar training type organization. It wasn't S, but something like it. And so I started working there, and I began to work as a trainer doing those sorts of trainings, which were quite, big and controversial. 3 days to get enlightened, and everyone was shut in a hotel room, and they shouted at you, and you had your big experiences, and people did come out transformed. So I did that for a number of years, and then the organization that I was with decided that, that really wasn't enough, and they wanted to set up a marketing company. So they set up a marketing company. We ended up employing 200 or 300 people in a telephone marketing company, using the communication skills in order to actually have that happen. And we used to go off. We used to fly everybody off on holidays together. It was a very sort of close thing. Yeah. And then we decided to go into politics. So we joined a political party. I sort of ran a campaign for what was then called the SDP, but nowadays in England it's called the Liberal Democrats. Okay. We ran a full campaign in the general election, and went through all of that. And in the end, it ended up being a big marketing company, consultancy. And I was living in Hampstead, which is a posh area of London. I was driving into Knightsbridge, which is another posh area of London, in a suit. And I thought, what am I doing? I'm doing exactly the same that I was doing. And funny enough, I was on a running machine in the Hyatt Carlton Hotel, trying to get fit. And I had this voice come into my head saying, would you be prepared to die for me? I thought, well, I'm an arrogant sod. I thought, I'd be prepared to put myself on the line for anything, And so this voice said, well, what's the big deal about leaving this company that you've been a part of for 14 years? Yeah. So I decided I would leave and just, go out. And, having left that, I thought, well, what do I do now? And I thought, well, my mother would never forgive me if I changed my name to Prem Anand something or other. And also, yellow's not my color. I'm a winter. I've had my colors done, and really, I couldn't end up wearing it. So I thought the only thing to do is go into the church.
Of course.
Because, if you talk about, God and you're in the church, they welcome you and invite you to have a cup of tea with them because you're a vicar in the Church of England, and it's all kosher. So that's what took me into the church.
So, and when you first went into the church, you somehow got yourself involved, and I did for a few years as well in Colorado here, with an evangelical megachurch. And I like your description because it was my feeling too, that while I was welcomed in, while everybody was friendly, while I was social with people on all levels and strata, there is a strata to it, just like there is and all of the other social circumstances you talk about, particularly in England. Things there, they didn't feel I was, as you put it, quite kosher.
No, I was definitely not kosher. In fact, when I started going towards the church, I was sort of just decided that this was it. This was the God business. And I was in another party. We go to a lot of parties and things. So at a party, I saw this woman. She was all dressed in ermine and pearls and looking particularly, splendid. And I went up to her and started talking to her. She said, what are you doing? I said, well, I'm going to get ordained into the church. She said, well, have you accepted Christ as your savior? And I thought about it. I thought, no, actually, I haven't, to tell you the truth. And I thought, well, actually, I ought to sort of do that. And I had a good meditation practice. And I went into my meditation practice and I thought, well, I thought, is anybody out there type stuff, come in. Yeah, exactly. And so I opened myself up. And, I don't know what, I had an experience. I had an experience that I was not alone. And there was an immense feeling of joy. And then I had a secondary experience, which was that in all my life, I had never really, in the spiritual side of things, never served anybody but myself. It had all been about me, getting enlightened, doing all the business that I was doing. And I suddenly felt an experience of shame. And then typical me, my mind straight away went, okay, you've had your experience of union, you've had your experience of shame, you're kosher in this game. So I went off and I was able to go and join an evangelical church. And it's very interesting. The Alpha course, I don't know if you've heard about it there, they have these big courses where people sort of give their life to the Holy Spirit. And it's just like, Est or anything like that. There's a complete transformation that comes about. And I got involved in that. But they knew somewhere that really, I didn't go with all the stuff about gays all being wrong. I didn't think that if you did yoga, you came from the devil. And they knew somewhere that I wasn't really there. I mean, it came to one point where we had a weekend away with some friends. I brought a friend of mine along, and he brought his girlfriend. And the church came up to him and said, would I go and tell him that he should not be sharing a room with his girlfriend? And I said, I'm afraid I won't be going and telling him he shouldn't be sharing a room with his girlfriend. And I think at that point we decided that, probably wasn't the direction to go in. But it was useful for me because it enabled me. I got my sort of evangelical wings, which meant I was accepted anywhere in the church, really, which was great.
I love it. I went through a similar process, wasn't trying to be ordained until I was kicked out of the church choir because they decided my belief system wasn't quite where it needed to be for me to sing on stage.
Michael, that's great. You didn't actually represent the manifestation that they were looking for. I know exactly what you mean. Yeah. I mean, I still get on with some people there.
Yeah.
I mean, really, those churches, it's the best fun you can have in church with your clothes on.
Oh
it
my
really
God,
is.
yes.
The social life is fantastic. They drink a lot. They have a wonderful time. Yeah.
So let's go from there, from the most fun you can have in church with your clothes on, to the church in England and the Rochester Cathedral in June 1997.
Yes, and I had decided. I was going to get ordained, and I went to theological college, and I had a fantastic time. I went to college for a second time. I mean, I'd been at college, when I was in 1974 when I was young, but I'd sort of messed it up a bit. I didn't really take it too seriously. This time, I decided I was really going to go for it. I did Romeo and Juliet. I was Lord Capulet. I did dram soccer. I used to sit in cafes, reading left-wing newspapers and drinking coffee. I was elected president of the college. I did all the stuff. I sort of fulfilled all my sort of school wish fulfillment.
If only I could go back and.
That's right. I went back in time and I thought, this is amazing. I find myself at the Freshers' Fair, all these sorts of stuff. I was 40. And yeah, I just really had a great time. And then you get ordained and you go off to, I had a terrible story to say, the day I was going to get ordained, you go off to you have a retreat where you spend sort of 48 hours getting yourself clear that this is the right thing for you, and you put your dog collar on for the first time. When you see yourself with the dog collar, I don't wear one. It's called a dog collar in England. In America, they've got a clerical collar. You put it on and you shock yourself for the first time, And so everyone, we all got ready to go and get ordained, and everybody left, and I was the last to leave the retreat center, and I went down to my car, got in the car, and it wouldn't start. And we were like 40 miles from where I was going to be ordained, and it was going to be in an hour and a half's time. I couldn't get it to start. And there was this panic started to rise in me that, I was never going to make it. That no one would come in time. And eventually I got it started. And then I went off to Rochester Cathedral and, was ordained into the Church of England.
Yeah, it really gets to, and we're going to go there in just a few minutes, the crux of letting go of the illusion of control as you're in the car going to give your life and it's not starting.
No, you could feel the bile, the fear rise in you and the panic rise in you because there's no way I was going to get that. And you do have to let go. And actually going into the church was a letting go of control as well. Because, on one level, it wasn't me. And I was once trapped in London by the March for Jesus. And it was a very, very instructive thing. I was in my car and I couldn't drive it anywhere because all around me was the March for Jesus. And to me, that was it was almost symbolic of what was happening to me. I was just trying to get out. But, I arrived when I got into the church, it was amazing because I hadn't realized there was such a thing as the contemplative tradition. And, what I suddenly realized when I got in there was that really whatever the PR is like, all the ridiculous stuff, it's bigger here than it even is in England. All the ridiculous stuff that's been made of it. The fact of the matter is that when you come down to it, that Christianity is an Eastern religion.
Thank you.
The kingdom of heaven is within you. What does that mean? I am in the Father, you are in me, and I am in you. The whole thing is about that experience of interconnected consciousness. And it's right the way there. Or if you can see it, it's there. There is a secret wisdom that it's the heart of it, that the nature of the body of Christ, the whole thing is about the interconnectedness of all things. It is about a fundamental level of consciousness. And all the way through, that identity of that consciousness is there. I always think one of the most interesting bits in the Bible is when Moses is on with the burning bush. And God says to him, go and say to the Israelites, let my people go. And Moses says to God, if I go and say that to them, who shall I say has sent me? What's your name? He says. And God could have said anything. And what God says to Moses at that point, he says, I am who I am. Go and tell them that I am has sent you. And he's really saying the essence of who you are is that nature of godness that is there. In Genesis, God made man in his own image, in his likeness, he made him. So it is absolutely there. And I think it was all there until 300 AD. Constantine is the one that totally messed with it. He said that, the church and state are one, therefore, if you go out there and you don't believe in this, we'll kill you. And that's just all the way through, all those centuries, burning people, killing people. It's all about politics. It's all about control. And to some extent, it's still all about control. People telling you how, what your sex life should be like, how you should behave in different situations. It's about control. And but anyway, more importantly, I saw that contemplative tradition that existed there. And that just opened it up for me. And I just knew that I could work with this.
What I like about your book so much, we're going to go just a tiny bit more into your story, then we're going to go into your book, is I'm like, well, this is mystic. This is a Meister Eckhart kind of book.
Yeah.
You get it, and you get it at that top level, that this is at the top, I believe, of every, I'm going to put it in quotes, religion, which is an organization, a political group. There's the mystical tradition everywhere.
B. Griffiths says that the goal of all religions is the same. It is that one transcendent experience. It is that experience which the intellect is always searching for. That is the goal. And the intellect will not be satisfied until it finds that one ultimate truth. And, they're all manifestations to the same desire. They're all, whatever religion you look, if you look at Muhammad having a big experience in the cave, yeah. You look at, Moses having a big experience, you look at Jesus having a big experience, you look at Buddha having a big, it's all people having a big experience and saying, hey guys, it's all connected. There is one consciousness that we are all a part of.
Yeah. So let's go from one consciousness to something you'd been wanting your whole life and you gave up on. And it is at that point that it comes and finds you. How'd you meet your wife?
Wow. Yes. I mean, I have to say that was, something that really was a huge deal for me. Having gone through all that stuff of, not crying, and then relationships really being about just sex to make you feel better and all that sort of business. I'd given up at a certain point. I was at theological college, and when you're going towards being ordained, a part of you has to think, well, I better do this right. Yeah. I'm not going to mess around. I can't go in this direction and continue this dysfunctional lifestyle. So I made a decision that I was going to give up on that. That was not going to be, it had been a real goal for me. People used to come to me, when I was in politics, people used to come to me and say, what is your most important goal in life? And they were thinking, to reduce taxes and to change the welfare system. And my important goal in life was to get married. I wanted a family. I wanted someone to love. I wanted an experience of love. And so I just gave that up. And so I got ordained, and I went to my parish, my first parish, which is in a place called Tunbridge Wells in England. And there was this girl there, and she was 21 and I was 40 something. And so I thought, I am not going there. For me, she had trouble written across her forehead. I just thought, this is typically classic situation. So I literally made a decision that I wasn't going to go there at all. There was no way. And, she was about, we did, stuff was happening around. And then one Sunday evening at 10 o'clock in the evening, she rang me up and she said, I just rang up to see how it's going. And to me, that just opened the door. And I just thought, well, if she's ringing me up at 10 o'clock at night to ask me how it's going, a door is being opened here. So I, told her what I thought and all that sort of business. And you know, it took 3 years really, to go through all the ramifications of, we took a year just to say, no, this is not it. And then we worked about it. And then I'd asked her to marry me. And then one evening, there was a knock on the door downstairs in my thing. And she was at the door. And she had yes written in felt tip on her forehead. So that was it, And her parents were great. Yeah, it was a woohoo. Her parents were great, and they were very kind. Here I was, a mouthy old 40-year-old, and they were very good allowing their daughter to marry me. And so we got married in 2001, and we now have 2 children. Samuel, age 15. Jessica, age 13, and here we are, in America, and it's been a wonderful experience.
Awesome. In fact, that's the last question before we dive into the book. And my wife, Jessica, we were talking about it beforehand. Apparently, at the 14-year mark, you're saying, what should we do? There's a discussion about, and you can explain how this came about, going to America. And the most interesting thing is that you gave your kids, I believe they were 8 and 10, you gave both your kids veto power.
Yes, that's right. Well, let me just give you a minute. I got into the church, and then I went to Norwich, which is this place in east of England, and I was always aware about the fact that when I wanted to get into this whole spirituality business and talked about enlightenment, it was so difficult to find out what that was all about. I mean, you go to people and say, oh, how do I get enlightened? They say, well, if you join my religion and meditate for 3 years, then you'll be in the space to know what it's all about. Yeah. Or if you've got to follow these beliefs. And it was so difficult. No one would say, this is the territory of what it was about. So I developed a course called Developing Consciousness, which literally identified the territory of what it's not how you can't tell someone how to get enlightened. I mean, it's just ridiculous. But you can say it's about the mind, it's about consciousness, it's about this, it's about that. These are things to be aware of. So I developed this course, and I started to do it in Norwich, and people used to come up to me and say, "Does the bishop know?" And I'd say to them, well, actually, he does, and he totally approves of it. It was very good. So I stayed there for 13 years. And they always say, if you're a minister, 3 years is too early to leave. Yeah. 14 years is you're lucky. 21 years, they want to get rid of you. So I'd been there 13 years, and I thought, well, that would be a good thing. So I went off with my wife. We went to a hotel, and I said, what should we do next? And I'd written my book in America, in Albuquerque. And she said, I said, where do you like to go? She said, well, I'd like to go somewhere airy. So I sort of put into the search engine, America, churches, airy. And it came up with this place, the Aspen Chapel. I said, well, what about Aspen? It just sounds great. So, literally, I looked at the website, and they were all into Meister Eckhart, someone called Cynthia Bourgeault, who I knew, had invited to England, Richard Rohr, James Finley, Thomas Keating. All these names were there, and I thought, that's my game. So, 3 phone calls, 2 Skype interviews later, we were off the job to come out here to Aspen. And my kids were, 8 and 6, or 10 and 8, something like that. And I just knew that it would cost us a fortune in therapy down the line if they didn't own this decision. So the church were horrified. I said to them, look, guys, we could go to America. We came out here on an interview. I didn't even tell them. We just arrived. And I said, well, how do you fancy living here? So anyway, when we got off the job, I said, look, if you want to, each of us has a veto. If you say we don't want to go, then we won't go. We'll stay in England. And they voted to come. And, we all voted to come. And that's how we got out here.
What sold them on it?
Well, 2 things sold them on it. It's very interesting. First of all, we took them. We said, do you want to go and see some schools? And so we went out and see all these schools. And we first of all took them to this really hippie type of school in Aspen. There are a few of those. And my wife and I loved it. It was amazing. There was papier-mâché whales on the ceiling. They were all wearing sort of like, all the teachers had long hair, and they were really into the groove of everything. And we thought, this is where we want our children to think. So we made the decision. That was it. And we were driving away, and we had a voice from the back saying, if you think we're going to that school with that bunch of hippies, you've got another thing coming. So we drove them to the middle school,
Yep.
and there were just banks of computers and, opportunities of doing stuff. And that was attracted to them. And then we took them to the huge wildlife park. And there's a huge wildlife area where you can have owls on your hands. And, in Aspen, it's called ACES. It's a big environmental center. And my son had an experience in the middle of the wilderness, and he said, I want to come. And that's what really sold it to them. Computers and the environment.
And owls. You got to throw the owls in there.
Yeah, they do. They have these huge things there. It's amazing. ACES is an amazing thing.
Score 1 for ACES. So, diving into the book, is this a friendly place or a dangerous place?
Do you know, that is the key question. I always think it's such an interesting story. And, it's an apocryphal story, and people have told me it did happen or it didn't happen. It doesn't matter. The fact of the matter is that supposedly when Einstein arrived in America for the first time, he got off the gangplank, off the ship, and a reporter went up to him and said, Professor Einstein, what is the most important question you can ask about life? I mean, the guy should have got a Pulitzer Prize for that question. And Einstein said, apparently, the most important question you can ask about life is the universe a friendly place or not? Because if the universe is not a friendly place, then you have to spend all your energy, all your understanding, all your money in defending yourself against this unfriendly universe. But if the universe is neither friendly or unfriendly, then, you might as well just do anything you like. But if the universe is a friendly place, then surely what we should be doing is spending all our energies, all our money, everything we've got, trying to understand how to cooperate with a friendly universe. And really, that is the game of life. It's working out, this is my view, it's working out how do you cooperate with the universe? How do you actually make it happen?
Beautiful. Thank you. In fact, there's something that you say in this section of the book. How do we square the order in the universe with the chaos in our lives?
I think that's always struck me now, because, we always talk about, the universe is ordered and all that sort of business. But most of us, our lives are absolute chaos, when it comes down to it. We get cancer. Our husband or wives, they run off with other people. We get mugged in the street. How can you actually, it seems that the universe is completely ordered right up to this point here. And the moment it gets personal, in other words, the moment it really matters, it's not. And, I think most of religion, in the modern terms, is about trying to explain to people why it's okay that their lives are chaotic, why it's okay, that they experience pain. It's really pain mitigation. It's saying it's okay, because Jesus died for you and it's all going to be okay finally in the end. Your pain is, all that sort of stuff is an excuse. It's trying to give you a good reason as to why you experience chaos and pain. When, that is no good to us. What we want to do somehow is find that order at the center of the universe. How do you find that order at the center of the universe? And I think that is the key question in actually, I've called the book Living the Life Force, because, how do you get to that point where you experience yourself in that order as part of the universe rather than as a part of all the chaos that's going on around you?
And how do we start? T.S. Eliot, he calls it the still point within. How do we start to experience that?
Well, when you start to look at the way that we experience the chaos in our lives, the way that everything is going on, you very quickly become aware that the most chaotic thing in your life is your rational mind. And that your rational mind is creating, it's not creating the chaos out there, it's creating the chaos within. And it's actually giving you an experience that is fearful, that is griefful, that is chaotic, that is out of control, that is all that sort of stuff. And so, the perspective that I've, come to is that the way that you actually cooperate with that universe is by going to that still point that actually, your mind is great. Let's just face it. we wouldn't be here talking to each other like this if various fantastically clever minds hadn't invented all of civilization to get to the point where Mr. Skype said, hey guys, let's do this. And, that's all great. And our minds, but the purpose of our mind is to survive. It just keeps us alive. But it gets to a point where it's no longer clever just to be clever. There's no point in getting even cleverer and even cleverer. You've got to go to a point where you're beyond that. And I think that, my view is that all of evolution is about the evolution of consciousness, that the whole story, right from the Big Bang, is about the evolution of consciousness, that there was a fundamental moment when consciousness manifested in the Big Bang, and there was a consciousness latent in those rocks, in those particles that were flown out there. And that consciousness, 13.7 billion years ago, gradually sort of ended up, let's say we're on Earth here, and gradually end up with, the consciousness manifested in single cell organisms, however, and then that consciousness then manifested into slightly more complicated, and then plants and animals and everything. And we're the flower of that. We are the flower of that consciousness. We are, as Brian Swim says, we are the universe made conscious of itself. I'm looking at you. I'm looking at Michael, who is a conscious part of the universe, looking at Nicholas, who is a conscious part of the universe, and we connect on that level of consciousness. And, the next level of consciousness, and that's what we're interested in. Where's evolution going to go? For me, the next level of consciousness is not for my son to have a larger thumb for texting. It's not to, to be able to sort of develop our these things so that we can, it's not that. The next level of the next level is the evolution of consciousness, where we then go beyond the cleverness of our minds, go beyond the trying to do it better and better and better. And suddenly we realize that our minds have taken us as far as that we can go. And that what we have to do is to bring ourselves down into our hearts, into that place of peace in our hearts. And it's in that still point in the turning world, in that place of peace, inside ourselves, that we find the order that is the connecting point to the universe. The understanding is there. The understanding of what to do is there. And, we've learned over the years the nature of meditation, the nature of bringing ourselves into that point of where our minds are no longer involved, but we are simply giving ourselves to that universe. Now, to me, that point, which Meister Eckhart, who you mentioned, he says that point is where you want for nothing. The meditative state is the point of wanting for nothing, where you arrive at a point where you want for nothing. You just realize that it just is, and therefore you will nothing. There's nothing to do. It just is, and then you don't need to will anything. And then the next step, the big step, is you have to admit that you know nothing, because we don't. Our minds do not have the ability to comprehend the creative consciousness that has created us who we are. We're just not able to do that. We call it God because it's simple. We have a picture of an old man in the sky because it makes us feel better. Or we have a picture of a younger man in the sky who was crucified, whatever it is. It makes us feel a lot better about it. But the truth is we haven't got a clue. And so you arrive at that meditative state, which is wanting for nothing, willing nothing, and knowing nothing. And then all you're doing is being present. And to me, this is how you communicate with the universe. This is how you cooperate, because you engage yourself in an act of love. My definition of love is giving with no expectation of a return. It's giving with no expectation of return. Now, my perception is that the universe has been given with no expectation. There's no one saying that, hey, the universe has been given to you, you now need to account for that. No, the universe is just given. And, we are given our lives with no expectation of return. The life that we have, the life that Michael has, no one came up to me to account for what I've been given in my life. It is given totally freely. And if you look at the nature of love, it is about giving with no expectation of return. And therefore, the language of the universe is love. The universe speaks in the language of love. And so we're trying to work out, and by the way, it's all about language. Everything is about, even us
In the
talking now.
beginning, there was the Word.
Yeah, thank you, Michael. You should come teach here. Absolutely. It's all about language. So the question, therefore, following on from Einstein, is what is the language that you communicate to the universe in? You know, what is the language? And you know, the language you communicate in is the language of love. And so to bring yourself into that meditative state where you are in a place of meditation, not to get enlightened, not to feel better, not to have your heart rate go down, not so you don't get cancer, not for any of those reasons, but just to give yourself to the universe with no expectation of return, is the work that we are all given to do. And that is how you communicate. In my view, that is how you communicate with the universe. And it's at that point that you then become a part of the universe. You then become a part of that consciousness. I mean, the way that I think it works is it's all about the mind, all about mind. You have your rational mind, and your rational mind is, you know, it's all. And mind, the word mind comes from the old German word, which actually means memory. And it's really understanding the context that things happen in. So you've got your mind, and we all are familiar with that. And then we become aware of our minds. But then you've got your body mind. And we know our body minds exist because, you know, how do you beat your heart? Who knows? How do I remember how to breathe? How do I remember, you know, to fight? How do I send white blood cells when I've got an infection? How do I do it? We don't know. So there is a body mind that remembers how to do all this stuff. And then, you know, a plant has a mind. You know, animals have minds because they remember. And then there's a planetary mind. You know, the planet remembers how to keep itself going, how to keep turning. Do you know, the Earth's always going to be okay. Everyone's worried about, you know, global warming and things like that. It's going to be fine with the Earth. You know, it's going to carry on.
Us.
It's us that are going to be the problem. The Earth will at some point think, this isn't working for me. Guys, I just want to say, guys, this is not working for me. Yeah. And, you know, we've been here, 10,000 years at the most, or whatever, conscious. The Earth's been here for, you know, billions of years. So it may take a millennia to get rid of us, but it will. So the Earth has, and then it'll start again, whatever. So the Earth has its mind. And then I'm suggesting here that the universal mind is the big mind, and that our role in life is to become an aspect of that universal mind. And we then become connected to the universal mind. And then our life then becomes in service to the universal mind. And that is really... that is the game, really. How do you become, you know, this sounds like something out of, you know, Avengers Infinity Endgame. How do you become agents of the universal mind? I'm not really thinking.
And in this case, we'll call it of the language of love. You become agents of the language of love.
That's right. You do. You become agents of love. That's right. But the truth is, you then become... you become part of that universal mind. And you then, in one level, although you're using your rational mind, although you're using your body mind, although you're using the planetary mind, somewhere in there you are fundamentally connected with the universal mind. And then your life becomes in service of that. And, you know, I love all the evidence of the fact of, you know, Paul in Romans talks about becoming living sacrifices. And, you know, a sacrifice is sacrificio, sacred, made sacred. That's what sacrifice is. Sacre, sacred, ficio, made. A sacrifice is something that is made holy. So we become made holy by our living sacrifice, by giving our life in love. We become made holy. We become part of that universal mind, and we act for that universal mind.
I want to bring a little clarity here, because in the West, we could get really confused if we say a living sacrifice, because there's a term that to me is not about love, and that is martyring ourselves.
Yes. And you know, that's politics again. That's what's taken that. And that whole thing now becomes, you know, it becomes sort of allowing yourself to be killed. If you look at the true root meanings of these words, the nature of sacrificio, it's only worth talking about or interested in when you look about having yourself become, how do you give yourself to the world? How do you become made holy? And actually, and in giving yourself to that life, you are sacrificing, really, because when you go into meditation, you're sacrificing the wonder of your mind and all your wonderful thoughts, and you're sacrificing going and, doing all the stuff that on one level, but it is not a giving up of something. It is a being made holy thing. And that's why it's worth making that point. It is the fact that we're being made holy. And then you see, I believe that then we come into our own. This is living the life force. It is when we are an aspect of that universal mind that we become able to we then become that which enables the transformation of consciousness, the evolution of consciousness. We then become agents of that evolution of consciousness, because it means that each of us, our life has complete meaning, because it means that what we do, the way we respond to situations, is affecting the whole of the nature of consciousness. And I think that's interesting. I think that, it's interesting because when you look at things spiritually, everything has equal value. You don't say an ant is better than a mountain. An ant is not better than a mountain. They have equal value. Everything in the universe has equal value. And so we have equal value with anything that occurs in the universe. We are just as relevant to anything that's happening. And actually, because of the nature of the consciousness we are, it's possible that the effect that we can have can be vastly greater than the size of who we think of ourselves, little old me in the huge universe. But actually, because of the nature of our consciousness, the impact that we have can be huge. And I always think it's interesting that, a nuclear bomb happens because the tiniest of things, the tiniest of particles. And what is not to say that we can't have that sort of nuclear effect through the nature of love. And I think that the way that we operate, there's something I used to call in my book, I call it emotional photosynthesis. And I think that one of our roles in life is to provide ourselves, to become a part of that emotional photosynthesis. Because what happens when people, all over the world, there's war, there's oppression, there's disaster, mainly because people experience pain in their lives, they experience bad feelings, and they blame other people for it. They say, I'm experiencing pain in my life. It's all the Muslims' fault. It's all the Jews' fault. It's all the gays' fault. It's all the rich people's fault. It's all the poor people, the refugees' fault. And then you get together and you say, right, it's all about them. And then you go out and you get rid of them, or you push them away, and you say, I'm going to push these people away, and therefore my pain will be less. And that is the way of the world. That's the nature of that. That is when you have when a goat is put out into the wilderness, it is a scapegoat, and we scapegoat everybody else. I'm saying in emotional photosynthesis, so what our role is to take the experiences that we have, whether they be pain or hate or difficulty or anger, whatever it is. And our role is to take those experiences and then transform them, and in their place give out love. So we become these chloroplasts where we take these negative feelings, and rather than blaming other people for it or attacking out, we transform them within ourselves, and we give out love. And when you get that, you get that your life has total meaning, because each of us has our own trials in life. It may be you've got cancer. It may be that you've lost all your money. This is not going to stop those things happening, because that happens. You look in nature, it happens. But what it does do, it enables you to take the circumstances of your life and transform consciousness by using those circumstances. You take those negative feelings, and instead you give out an experience of love to those who are around you. And it transforms the nature of consciousness one person at a time. It means that your life, however insignificant it may seem, is a vehicle for the transformation of consciousness. And what you do, even if it's in your room, even if it's just, you and yourself, is having an effect on the whole. Because I do believe things are evolving. For me, the second coming is where all creation recognizes itself in itself. And suddenly everybody goes, aha! And, you realize the nature of the whole consciousness being of one. And so all we are doing is we are preparing the consciousness that exists through our lives to have that come about. And that's how you live the life force, by having that peace at the center of your lives and taking what comes your way, whatever it be, and transforming that through the way that you live your life. And the way that you do that is you take it into your practice. You use your practice to do that. You use all the various things that are there.
Woohoo! This is brilliant, and we're going to run long. If you're good on time, we're running a little bit long because this is a brilliant conversation. Are you good?
Yeah, I'm good.
So thank you. So going to the atom, it got me thinking, which is the smallest thing makes the biggest change. And if we think in terms of physics, let's play with physics for a minute. We are infinite. Existence is infinite in all directions. There is no particle that you can break down small enough to say, well, that's it. We're done. There are no more particles. Whether you go big, small, sideways, 3 dimensions, 4 dimensions, whatever you want to call it, infinite in all directions. When we realize that and realize who we are in essence the universe. We are a piece of life force. Then you're saying, we each then have infinite power, don't we? So with the atom, we're looking at, or with the hydrogen bomb, I guess it was hydrogen before nuclear bomb, it is a change, a tiniest change in an atom that has a massive effect. Now, if we look at physics, what we realize is you can drill down to the smallest atom. It's infinite in all directions. Drill down to the smallest atom or particle. You never reach a limit and say, well, that's it for particles. Go to the biggest thing. You'll never reach a limit and say, that's the biggest thing there is out there. Infinite in all directions. If we then realize that we have the universe within us, that we are infinite in all directions, then we begin to realize our infinite power, and that's what we're talking about here. The ability when we are on track or on purpose. I'm actually giving a live talk about this later this evening on YouTube. We're on track and on purpose. We are having an infinite effect. We can't even imagine the power that we have and the difference we can make on consciousness, through consciousness, with consciousness, being consciousness.
I think that's absolutely true. And, how the question then is, how do you do that? How do you act? What is it, if you've got infinite power, are you ending up like something, as a superhero where, no, actually, all we're required to do is to communicate with the universe in the language of love. Now, it's not up to us to even decide how we're going to affect it. I always think it's interesting when you list the people who actually didn't know the impact of their lives. Look at Van Gogh. Look at he never knew. He never sold a painting, I don't think, in his entire life. And there are a whole list of people who never actually realized the impact they were having during their lives. And we're stopped by the fact that we think we're not having an impact. The truth of the matter is we don't know what the impact will be of our lives, in the future. And all we can do is be appropriate to our understanding of the nature of life. And the nature of life is that the currency of the universe, the language of the universe is love. And therefore, what our role is to engage with the universe in a loving act that is away from our egotistical desires, and simply to be present in that moment. And, practice is what's important, I think, in that.
Thank you. Several different things. First off, and I'm not going to go into the whole story, nor do I know the whole story behind it, but the butterfly effect. They say that if something flaps their wings in Japan or Hawaii, it affects the whole world. What does it mean to live or to be or to work or exist in the language of love?
Well, I think the first thing you have to do is to commit yourself to that. I mean, just backing up to what I said before, love is giving with no expectation of return. So it's very difficult to actually practice that in everyday life. So a meditation practice is the practice of giving with no expectation of return. It is a practice of going beyond your mind. It is a practice of being present, wanting for nothing, willing nothing, and being willing to know nothing. And you stay there in that state, continually coming back to all I'm doing is giving to that universe. Now, I love the idea that it's a practice because you're literally practicing it. So then when you leave, when you go out into your day, something in you is connected at that particular level. And it gets easier and easier when someone comes at you with something, not to come back at them with anger or whatever it is, but to recognize that here is an experience coming in your direction and that the way to respond to it is compassion. The way to respond to it is compatio, to actually understand. And, it's very interesting. Patience, which you have to have in this game, comes from that original Latin word pati, which means to suffer. And it's the same root as the word compassion. You have to be willing to feel with, and you have to have the patience to know that you're probably never going to see the results of what you're doing, but you're willing to give your life anyway. And so it is a moment by moment thing. And you even don't know how you're affecting things. You just continually give yourself to that moment. And I love this. I'm a big fan of the Tao Te Ching. I mean, Lao Tzu, fantastic. That idea of that you do your work and then you step back, that is the path to serenity. To do your work, you don't even know the effect it's having. And then you step back and you allow the universe to take it forward because it's not you that's doing it. Thine is the kingdom, the power, it is thy will be done. It is giving up to that.
Beautiful. And we're going to dive into probably the Lord's Prayer in just a minute for fun, but there's a word that just keeps coming back to me that I've got to ask about. Congruere, to be congruent.
Be congruent, yes, be congruent, yes. I mean, it is being congruent with the universe. Yes, it is to be congruent. What we're talking about is being congruent with the universe itself, to enable oneself to actually participate at the deepest level. I love that thing, saying that spirituality is like a swimming pool. All the noise comes from the shallow end. And really, what we're talking about is depth. It is being congruent with the depth of the universe. And it's operating at a slow and deep level. I mean, it's we don't see the transformation that's happening in our own lives. It's very difficult to see it, but it is like mountains coming out of the sea. It is happening at that slow level.
Thank you. There's a question I can't believe I'm going to ask. It just popped into my head. You said depth, and what popped into my head is, what is the beauty of death or knowing about our death?
Well, I mean, I always bring my death into my practice. When I'm in my practice, what I like to do is just to confront the experience of death, because, death is an ever-present thing that happens. That moment you ask that question has died. This moment has died. That moment, every single moment is a dying moment, and no moment appears until a death has occurred. So death is actually obviously the door to whatever happens next. And so to be congruent, come back to your word, to be congruent with death is to be in the flow of life. To be congruent with death is to be in the flow of life, to allow things to go, to allow things to die, to allow a day to die, to allow things to move on, is how you look at the leaves on the ground. It is how the world works. I don't know what happens after our deaths. I mean, people are, as a priest, people do come to me and say, well, I haven't a clue. I really have no idea. I've never experienced that side of it. People have had near-death experiences, like yourself and things like that. They know something, but I don't know. But I do know that unless you are able to let go at that level, then you can't really move on.
Thank you. In fact, talking about a lack of control or a deliberate letting go of control, Viktor Frankl, between stimulus and response, there is a space. It is in that space is our power to choose our response.
Yes, that is the moment, and it is the growing of that space that you do when you practice that language of love. And in growing that space, you really have to give up. You have to give up your attachment to the outcomes in your life. I mean, that is such a key thing. And I talk about this in the book. We're so attached to the outcomes in our lives. I do this, let's say, or I write this book, so lots of people will read it, so this is going to happen. No, you have to let it go when it's happened. You have to let go of those attachments that you have to anything you're doing. You're really nice to your friends, so they'll be nice. No, you have to let go of those attachments. And that enables you to live in that present moment, I think.
That brings up another quote. What good would it be for someone to gain the whole world, yet forfeit their soul?
Yes, absolutely. And we are really growing our souls. That is what we're doing. We are coming into ourselves. We are coming into the true self of who we are, the nature of who we are. And, I always think it's so interesting, isn't it, that we always think that the soul exists within the body, whereas in fact, in the reality of it, the body exists within the soul, and that we are growing into our souls and becoming more conscious of our souls.
I love it. What does the Lord's Prayer mean to you, and is it something you say every day?
Well, it is, Janay, it is something I say every day, and I was taught this by someone called John Pettibone. I met him a couple of times, but he said to me, it's so interesting. He said that the Lord's Prayer is like a combination lock. Yeah. I don't know if you've seen that film Stargate.
Yes.
In
Stargate,
they have to get all these symbols, and they have to work out. Kurt Russell has to work out with whatever his name is, how those symbols work together. And the moment those symbols all line up, it goes, and it opens a portal into something. Now, this guy was saying to me that the Lord's Prayer is a combination lock to the portal of consciousness. And in saying the Lord's Prayer, what it does, it puts you in that place where consciousness can open up in you. And the way that he says it works is this. It starts off, when you say, I'm going to use the version he taught me. It's not exactly the same, but it's version. You start off with Father of Us, or Our Father, whatever it is, Father of Us. That is acknowledging the existence of other. The moment you say those words, Father of Us, or you are acknowledging the existence of a paradigm that is greater than yourself. So you are acknowledging that you are within a greater consciousness. Father of Us, the one who is in the heavens. It then places that consciousness within a reality, the one who is in the heavens. It says, actually, that consciousness, that other beingness exists, the one who is in the heavens. The kingdom of heaven is within you. So it is existing within you. So you say, Father of Us, you're acknowledging the nature of that other, the one who is within me, the one who is within me. Hallowed be your nature. What that means is that there's only one response to being in the presence of that divine consciousness, and that is to hallow, that is holy ground, that is to worship, that is to say, we're not worthy. It really is to say, here I am, little me, and I'm in the presence of consciousness. So you then are within the Father of Us, the one who said, hallowed be your nature. And then you say, may your kingdom come. May that reality be that which happens. Yeah. May your kingdom, may your will be done as in heaven, so on earth, as in this fundamental reality. May it happen in me, I am earth. May I conform, be congruary to that consciousness. Father of Us, the one who is in heaven, hallowed be, may your kingdom come. May your will be done as in heaven, so on earth. Give us this day our bread from above that gives our whole life meaning. Open this portal. Give me the meaning. Let me understand. Let me be. Give us this day our bread from above that gives our whole earth meaning. Cancel our debts. Let me not be attached to outcomes. Let me not be attached to anger. Let me not be attached to grief. As we cancel the accounts of those indebted towards us, as I free other people around me from all attachment that they might expect of me. For the kingdom For thine is counsel, as we counsel the accounts of those in the. Let us not be led into temptation. Let me not fiddle around with the system. Let me not tinker with it over here or over there so it comes my way. Let me not do the muck about with it. Let me not manipulate circumstances. Yeah. But rescue us from evil. But allow me not to be touched by those who are attempting to manipulate circumstances. I love that definition of evil, which is the privatization of good. It is where you take good and you make it for your own ends rather than have it be free. Rescue us from evil. Let me not be touched by it. For the kingdom, everything, the power, everything, and the glory, everything are yours. For, gabba, gabba, hey, it's all, it's all there now in this nowness and forever in the infiniteness of nature. Rowan Williams describes spirituality as the cultivation of a sensitive and rewarding relationship with eternal truth and love. This is the cultivation of a sensitive and rewarding relationship with eternal truth and love.
Woohoo! Nicholas, I am loving this interview. I love you. I love you. I love you. This is beautiful. Got just a few more wrap-up questions, then maybe you have.
I'm fine.
Okay, and then we'll jump into a brief meditation.
Okay.
If someone came to you and said, this is all well and good, but how do I find peace now in the moment? What would you tell them?
I would tell them that peace is available to everybody at all times. And it is a simple operation, I think, peace. First thing is that the lack of peace is occurring in one's minds. That is where it is happening. And you have to let go of your attachment to the rational mind. That old phrase, you are not your mind. We are so attached to our thoughts. You've got to let go of that. And the way that you let go of your attachment to your mind is by dropping down into your heart and by becoming conscious of your breath. Because if you're simply conscious of your breath, breathing in, breathing out, breathing in, breathing out. If you're simply conscious of your breath, you're not thinking. And if your thought comes in, you just let it go again and you stay with your breath. And you stay with your breath in your heart, and the peace lies in that. The peace lies in that still point in the turning world. It is always there. There's a wonderful prayer that Cranmer made up, the Collect for Purity, that's used by the Church of England. It says, O love divine, to whom all hearts are open. That divine spirit, all hearts are open, all desires known, and from whom no secrets are hidden. It means that we are totally a glass window to that consciousness. Cleanse the thoughts of my heart. Cleanse everything that's going on by the inspiration of your Holy Spirit. Come through me that I may perfectly love you, that my life may be a perfect love of that consciousness and worthily magnify your holy name, that I may be a part of that divine consciousness. Your peace lies you can't work out your peace. It lies in your breath. It lies in your heart. And you have to experience that peace. You have to bring yourself to the point of peace. And it is our responsibility to bring ourselves to that point of peace. It won't cure your cancer. It won't stop your husband or wife leaving you. It won't deal with the fact you've lost all your money. But you will be at peace in yourself and you'll be connected to that universe.
Woohoo! What can you tell us about Jesus and how the lilies grow?
Consider the birds of the air, the lilies of the field. They do not toil, nor do they spin, yet they are more beautiful than Solomon in all his glory. It's basically saying that, the lilies can be beautiful and they let go. I want to say something as well, though. This doesn't mean to say that one should not go out and do everything one possibly can to make one's life fantastic. Yeah. Like the two things I want to say. First of all, keep taking your meds. You should keep taking it. This is not about not taking your meds because, we all need to take those things. It's not about giving up. And, Van Gogh thought that it's all about giving up. He became a missionary in Belgium And his brother Theo went and found him starving in a garret with no food. It is not about giving up trying. It is not about that. You put all your energy into everything you do. You give up the attachment to the results. It may be that that things do work out well, but they may not as well. So you're giving up attachment to the result. So do keep doing it. Keep putting your energy like you do into everything you can, the most possible, but don't be attached to the results.
Thank you. Jessica, my wife, the producer, always wants me to ask, what advice would you give to parents to help their kids today?
I have a 15-year-old and a 13-year-old. I'd very much like to answer that question. I think that really you have to love your children. Be there for them. Be there for them. Be there in all the ways you can for them, and be present to them, and have them feel your love. The biggest thing is to feel that. My son went vegetarian. Now, he went vegetarian because he's really concerned with how much water it takes to make a burger and how much water it takes to grain a salmon. He's got this whole rationale about why and he is committed. We went on one of those big package holidays where you can eat as much as you like. He didn't have a single piece of meat during the whole holiday. And I decided that one way I could really love my son is simply to go vegetarian.
Oh, you're super dad.
And it's great because I just feel such a bond with him on this, and it is to give them your heart and your love and also I think it's so important, not to react, not to, love them even if they're horrible to you. I do say to my son sometimes, I wish you were 30. I can't wait till you're 30, I say to him. And he's, oh, dad, like that. He gives me grief a lot of the time, and I just, soak it up. They are there. They are. I'm going to give you a cheat through it. I think the whole of Avengers Endgame is all about family. It's all about family. If you look at it, it's all. Even Thanos, his family is involved. Everybody's family is involved, and it's all about family. It's all about that love.
Woohoo! What brings you the greatest happiness, or what I call the woohoo factor?
This does. I am built to communicate this. This is what I'm here for. And this is what brings me the greatest happiness, actually. When I'm up in front of a room and I feel that I'm actually communicating what I'm here to communicate. This is when I'm actualizing myself. This brings me greater happiness than anything else. But don't tell my wife. It brings me greater happiness.
It's between you and me.
It is quite. It does bring me the greatest happiness. This, because I do feel connected. I feel that I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing. And I'm very lucky with lots of other things, but this brings me the greatest happiness.
I couldn't agree more, and that is a mighty woohoo! Where can people go to find out more, Nicholas, and to find your beautiful book?
Well, we have a website. I'm at the Aspen Chapel.
Yeah.
And if you go to aspenchapel.org, aspenchapel.org, you will see on our video wall 3 years worth of messages that I've done. If you go to Apple or any other device and you go to Aspen Chapel podcast, you won't get any of the guff, none of the music, none of the rest of the service. You just get the messages and titles on them. That's quite a good way just to hear this sort of. I will do a series. I'm doing a series on personal transformation at the moment, and I'm in about my eighth week on it. And you just, that's where you can get that. There are 2 books. One, Developing Consciousness, is you can get it on Amazon. It's available in good bookshops. Living the Life Force is coming out soon. You can get the Kindle version right now. The books will be available within the next 2 or 3 weeks, something like that, and that's available as well.
Excellent. And to summarize that, you can go to aspenchapel.org. You can find the Aspen Chapel podcast. You can get the books Developing Consciousness, Living the Life Force. If you didn't catch that, come on over to inspirenationshow.com, and we'll bring you right back over to aspenchapel.org as well.
Thank you. Michael, what a fantastic work you're doing with this. I so appreciate the work that you're doing to enable people like me just to communicate. You ask those questions, and I really feel that connection within that. And I just really want to thank you for facilitating this. Absolutely brilliant.
Thank you. Thank you. It is humbly, I don't have words. I don't have words. Thank you. Thank you. This is my calling, what I'm here to do as my job right now, and who knows what my job is in the future, to get all of these messages out and to get them out to everyone everywhere. We say our journey, our mission is to raise people's vibrations, elevate consciousness, shift humanity to a new level.
Yeah.
So,
amen.
Woohoo! Any last words of wisdom before we dive into a meditation?
Well, I just want to say bless everybody. I really want to say, guys, I just want to say, if you're watching this, be blessed, allow your life to be blessed. And I just want to wish you all the best with this, because, I've been, struggling with this, for 40 years now. And, it is an amazing journey to take. Be willing to step out in it. There are millions of books to read on this subject, millions of things to do. The moment you start, it'll start coming towards you. The books will come, the podcasts will come. You'll be led in the right direction, because the universe is calling you, whether you know it or not.
Woohoo! Universe conspiring for you and through you, not to you. Yes. So when you get in alignment, thank you.
Thank you.
So would you have time, Nicholas? This is brilliant, and I'm loving it, loving it, loving it. Would you have time for a meditation?
Yeah, let's do that now. Let's just...
And if you're driving down the road, do this after you park the car.
Yes, because I'm going to see, would you like to close your eyes now? We're not doing the Bird Box challenge here. We're not asking people to close their eyes and drive. We don't believe in that. But if you are just starting, just when you've got, if you're just sitting there at a moment, just close your eyes. And just notice your body. Notice whether there's any pain. Now notice what you're thinking. Notice your thoughts. Even that one that said, what thought? Just think about what you've been preoccupied with recently. Maybe something to do with yourself or your family. Something at work. Health-wise. Just become aware of that. Become aware of what you've been preoccupied with today before you started listening to this. Notice that's always going on. Now, what I want you to do is just let that go, all of that. And I want you to drop down into your heart. Drop down to that place at the center of your chest. Just notice your breathing. That place is the place of peace. The still point in the turning world. That place is where we connect with the divine. That place is where we connect with each other. Right now, if you're listening to this, our place of connection is heart to heart. Now just become aware of your whole body. Your legs, your arms, your heart, your breathing. That is your body-mind. That keeps you well, that fights infection, remembers to tell you to go to the loo, tells you when you're excited. It's your body-mind. It remembers how to be. Just become aware of your body-mind. And now become aware of your feet touching the floor. And then beneath you, there is the earth mind, the huge planetary mind. That huge orb. Become aware of that huge orb beneath you that remembers how to keep itself watered, how to grow things. That enormous mind. We are a part of that mind. You are one of 7 billion neurons on the face of the earth. They say that you become a human being rather than a Neanderthal when you pass 7 billion neurons in your brain. The earth has now passed 7 billion people on the planet. The planet is conscious of itself. You're a part of that consciousness with 7 billion others. Some are more conscious than others.
I don't understand. They say that to become a human being robbed.
There are 7 billion people on the planet. You're one of 7 billion minds, connected to some degree or another, conscious of each other. And now become aware of the vast universal mind. The mind that is observable up to 130 billion light years away, but is bigger than that. The universal mind. And become aware that you are a part of that universal mind. You are one small point, but you are connected to that universal mind. Your life is significant. If your life was not significant, you would not be here. You are significant to the evolution of consciousness within that universal mind. Just contain the vastness of space. Know that that is a part of who you are. Bring yourself back now, being aware of the earth, being aware of your feet and the earth beneath your feet, being aware of your body-mind, being aware of your rational mind. Your life is before you. Make it count. And just when you're ready, open your eyes.
Woohoo!
I can't believe technology. I switched everything off. And yet because Siri heard me say something.
So now, I was staying fully present with the meditation. However, that did bring me a bit out. We've recently had on a beautiful, beautiful spiritual being having a human existence, Mo Gaudat. He was the chief business officer for Google X until last year.
Yeah.
And we were talking about artificial intelligence, consciousness, love, and the heart. And Siri is a representation of artificial intelligence.
Yeah.
And you said something about consciousness and love, and she said, I don't understand. And it actually flowed perfectly. I'm going to replay this back, and I'm just, it was so perfect in the evolution of consciousness and the evolution of artificial intelligence that she's going, I'm not there yet. I don't understand.
How amazing, Michael. That is an amazing thing to get that. That's great.
So This has been phenomenal, Nicholas. This is, I think I just may have my record long interview, because this is going to be one of my all-time. We're 1,100 plus shows in,
Right.
and this has been phenomenal.
Oh, well, thank you so much for your attention and everything. Look, we're close to each other. We should meet up at some point. It'd be
I
great.
would absolutely love it.
Yeah, well, let's do that. And when a moment that's going to work for you or whatever, I just so appreciate the opportunity of being with you and the way that you've conducted. It's been absolutely fantastic. Thank you so much.
Oh, thank you, thank you, thank you. This is it's a labor of love, of service, and I always like to say, if somebody went through the time of writing the book, I want to go through the time of preparing the best interview I can.
You'd really read it. I so appreciate the fact you knew what you were talking about. That really meant a lot to me, Michael. Thank you.
So, well, your words are important, and you are most welcome. Your words are so important.
Great.
So for everyone out there, this is Michael Sandler saying, be well, have fun, get living the life force, and begin letting go of your control today, and shine bright. Woohoo! I don't understand. Thanks so much for watching. If you enjoyed it, be sure to like below. Also, leave your comments. Have some real fun with it. Subscribe to our channel, where you're going to get more great videos, more interviews coming up. And check out our website, inspirenationshow.com. That's where you'll find tips, blogs, information, videos you won't find anywhere else, and useful and helpful resources to really help you kickstart your life and to shine bright. Thanks so much again. Thank you for your support. Like, comment, subscribe. See the website. Thanks so much, and have fun. Of course, shine bright. Woohoo!